They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but for this old dog, and I'm talking about the Arma series here, it seems like new tricks are the only thing it's interested in. Let me explain. Milsimmers are no stranger to jank, and there just ain't no jank quite like Arma jank. Bohemia Interactive could have continued the legacy of Arma 3 and just gave us a new story with different assets, but instead they opted to build the next generation of the series in a brand new custom engine, starting over from scratch. And while some residual jank is to be expected, Reforger has begun to modernize the Arma series in the ways that matter most. At least it seems like it's trying to. In fact, I've noticed that if you want to bring Arma 3 up to Reforger standards, then you've got to enable quite a handful of mods. So in this video, I want to cover 23 Arma 3 mods that Reforger makes obsolete. First up, I have to start with the audio because audio plays such a significant role in how we perceive things, particularly in games, and it's just such an important aspect to immersing the player into the virtual world. You might say that audio counts for 50% of the experience, but I'd argue that it's much more, because audio, together with the visuals, produce a result that's more than the sum of its parts, feeling and emotion. It has the power to inspire, and the power to make you feel a sense of urgency. I don't know why, but it seems like that most milsims have struggled with their soundscape in the past, often producing weapons that sound like pencils being tapped on a desk. And even when audio engineers record authentic weapon sounds at the range, it doesn't necessarily translate over into the game very well. Making weapons and explosions sound appropriately loud and impressive seems to be quite the challenge, and Arma 3 was no exception. To be fair, the sounds have improved quite a lot over the years, but for years, if you wanted to feel like you were immersed into the battlefield with incredible audio, you had to install the JSRS or Dynasound mod. But with Arma Reforger, the audio team at Bohemia are taking sound design much more seriously and are investing talent and resources into making the soundstage appropriately authentic. This is actually the first Arma title where I didn't feel the need to immediately look for a sound mod to enhance the experience. Is there more room for improvement? Sure. In fact, it would be nice if our characters actually shouted while in combat instead of just merely speaking loudly, like you're in trouble and about to go to the principal's office or something. But what we have now is a fantastic foundation. The quality of the weapon samples and environmental acoustics are one thing, and the existence of dynamic range is another. When simulating thousands of entities in every frame like Arma does, the audio mix can become quite complex and overwhelming at times, especially if environmental sounds overpower the sound of weapons fire. To ease this fatigue on your ears in Arma 3, you can install another sound mod called Environmental Ducking. This increases the dynamic range of the soundscape, allowing the ambience of flowing water or wind to present themselves as long as there aren't any other loud sound sources around you, like vehicle engines or gunfire. But in Reforger, this is baked right in. The next thing on the list addresses a long-standing Arma trope, and that is the lack of any kind of fluid movement around or over obstacles. The most you get in Arma 3 is a special vault key that janks you through the obstacle you're trying to get over, while the rest of the civilized world uses the spacebar to elegantly jump over and onto things. To fix this, the Enhanced Movement mod gives you the ability to do the same, and Reforger takes it to the next level, dynamically calculating whether you can step over or onto obstacles or completely lift yourself over a wall, with animations to boot. Communicating in Arma 3 was also pretty basic, with unfiltered voice over IP reminiscent of a Call of Duty lobby, at least when using global or team chat. To get an immersive experience, you had to use a third-party app called TeamSpeak and install a mod called Task Force Arrowhead Radio, which made speaking over the radio a very immersive experience. Reforger takes inspiration from this and properly assigns you to different channels based on your radio frequency and applies an audio filter that sounds great. Enemies can even listen in if they have one of your radios, which, as far as I'm aware, is 100% unique to the Arma series. I just wish Reforger had the ability to set which ear a radio channel will broadcast in. You might recognize the tactical battlefield by other names, such as Project Reality and Squad. If I remember correctly, some of the people behind Project Reality split off to make the Tactical Battlefield mod, and others split off to make Squad, which was a PvP game mode centered around capturing objectives, running logistics, and working as a team. with first person only, a squad system, roles, and radio comms, etc. etc. Sound familiar? The conflict game mode in Reforger may very well be based on previous iterations of Warlords from Arma 3, but the core experience is much more refined and flows very similar to Tactical Battlefield. However, one big difference is that conflict is rather asymmetrical and gives you an entire island to conquer over many hours, but Tactical Battlefield was much more linear and focused, which resulted in intensified fighting, and is what my own Season Secure mod is based on. As much as I love Arma 3, I'd be lying if I said that the vanilla medical system was anything other than arcadey. I mean, if you or your friend is injured, just hold spacebar and watch your character mime out a few motions real quick and voila! The Ace Medical mod brought depth to being a medic and could even be configured so far as to almost require a medical license to use it. Although not as deep, Reforger's medical system is like a light version of Ace Medical that still requires you to work under pressure to successfully stop your buddies from bleeding out on the battlefield. It's just a shame that we don't have dragging yet, but who knows, maybe it'll come later. One of the gripes people had with Arma 3 is that you couldn't carry more than one primary weapon, even if your character was physically able to. To fix this, you needed to install the Left Shoulder Scripted Weapon mod, which basically tricks the inventory system into thinking your second rifle is a launcher. I guess the devs thought this was too restrictive too, so in Reforger we're given 2 primary weapon slots for anything we want, no mod needed. But the irony here is that now people are running around as machine gun or sniper medics, and mods are coming out that put this restriction back in. Go figure. Ever since video games were on PC, we've used the mouse wheel to switch weapons and other slots. But one day, a game called Tarkov came along, and instead of using it to switch weapons and equipment, the mouse wheel controlled your movement speed. Minds were blown, and mods were created. The usefulness of having fine-tuned control over your movement speed was just as revolutionary as Arma 3's stance adjustments. In order to get this feature to somewhat work in Arma 3, you need to install the CE movement mod, which, kinda works, but you guessed it, it's already a base feature in Reforger. Weapon recoil in Arma 3 has always been kind of funny to look at. Every shot reminds me of a rubber band being slowly stretched out and snapped back in slow motion, instead of the instant kicking force one would expect from firing a weapon. Thankfully, the Recoil Coefficient Changer mod adds recoil animations that make firing weapons feel fluid and authentic, and in Reforger, weapons are already modeled to give you that instant kicking feedback from your weapon. One popular cosmetic feature people really like in Reforger is the ability to inspect your weapon so you can more appreciate the detail that went into it, but it also serves as an immersive way to change out attachments or magazine types. In order to have something similar in Arma 3, you can install the Exoset Inspecting Weapons mod, which, to be honest, is quite nice. However, you won't be able to interact with your weapon like you can in Reforger. I think we can all agree that inventory management in a game like Arma can be a difficult thing to get right. In Arma 3, the UI design is functional, but requires navigating through different inventories to get to the things you want to see. But in Reforger, the inventory screen is designed in such a way that lets you see where everything is, at a glance. Can there be improvements? Sure, it does kind of feel like a placeholder right now, and I blame Akuma. But then again, DayZ has been around for like 10 years with what looks like a placeholder inventory screen too, so I still blame Akuma. In any case, in order to get a similar type of inventory screen that Reforger has, you gotta install the Better Inventory mod, which is a nice quality of life improvement. Navigation is an important skill that each soldier should learn, and your ability to read a map is the first step in that regard. The vanilla maps in Arma 3 are fine, but the Enhanced Map mod reconfigures the map colors to look more like a topographical map for enhanced readability. And once you see it, it might look a little familiar, because this is how maps already look in Reforger. Speaking of maps, there's always been sort of a disconnect between your character and how they've been portrayed in the world when it comes to looking at your compass, watch, or map, as it was never really visualized by anyone other than yourself. And in Reforger, when you pull out your compass or map, everyone can see that you're using it. In order to get the same effect, the Immersive Maps mod is here to do just that, plus quite a little more. If you've ever wanted to go up to somebody and knock him in the face with the butt of your weapon in an Arma title, then Reforger is where it's at, especially with bayonets. However, you can still get melee functionality with the LEGO melee system, and it even works to break windows too. As we move into the mid-2020s, picture-in-picture scopes are beginning to be the new standard in first-person shooters. Not only do they look amazing and immersive, but they're often very expensive to run from a performance standpoint. Arma 3 had picture-in-picture for the mirrors on your vehicle, but scopes? Nope, that's just zoomed in. However, with Reforger's new engine, picture-in-picture scopes are not only standard, but it also runs decently well. To get the same in Arma 3, you'll need to install the picture-in-picture mod. Unfortunately, this seems to only work with RHS weapons, but you probably have that installed anyways. One of the things about Arma 3 that's always kind of looked a bit cartoonish to me was how characters reacted when they died. You shoot an enemy, and they always had this weird flinch. You kill them, and they fall over while dropping their weapon like Wile E. Coyote in the Roadrunner. Thankfully, there's a mod called Ragdoll Physics Plus that tones down the cartoonish flinches and deaths by overhauling the physics simulation and giving weight to characters so they tumble instead of slide. It almost looks as good as Reforger. When Arma 3 first came out, it was a beautiful looking game. You could argue that it still is, but you can't deny that the technology that runs the visuals is starting to show its age when compared to modern titles. Take global illumination, for example. In Arma 3, you always had this lighting layer that made environments look flat outside of direct lighting sources. And in Reforger's new engine, well, I'll just let this speak for itself. While some people may not find these visuals impressive, it's important to remember that this is Arma we're talking about, where the state of thousands of entities are simulated in every single frame. Impressively, there is a real lighting and weather mod for Arma 3 that aims to enable some more eye candy within this dinosaur of an engine. It brings with it special weather effects like raindrops and ambient illumination of the environment based on weather, too. One of the things I wasn't expecting out of an Arma title is the implementation of one of the best driving simulations in a video game. I'm talking about Reforger, of course. The vehicle simulation here is so involved that wheels have torque and traction, and the driving experience is affected by the type of terrain you're on, the suspension system, and even the gear ratios of the transmission. It honestly puts GTA 5 driving on notice, because it's never been so much fun to drift around corners with explosions happening all around you. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for Arma 3, which feels more like a floaty camera with a vehicle surrounding it. However, you can gain a little bit of this Reforger authenticity in the vehicle behavior by installing the Realistic Driving Terrains mod, which will have you sliding down hills and peeling out in no time. One thing I love about the Arma series is how authentic the environments are to real life. There seems to be no gimmicks about them. No artificial designs to provide balance for balance sake, but there are locations that we find in real life where we can create scenarios to find out what it would be like to have a battle here. But one thing that stands out right away in Arma 3 is just how empty the buildings are, which makes the environment feel somewhat sterile and difficult to suspend your disbelief. Bohemia was self-aware of this and even left some Easter eggs behind, like flyers found near trash heaps, speculating on the disappearance of all the furniture by aliens. Eventually, Arma 3 got a mod that dynamically places furniture in buildings whenever you're within range, called Tinter Furniture, which helps to keep performance reasonable and the world feeling lived in. Of course, this isn't an issue in Reforger since buildings are furnished by default in the new engine. Having cluttered HUD elements is a common problem video game designers deal with, and even though Arma 3 isn't so bad, that doesn't mean there aren't options to clean it up even more. With the Vile HUD mod, the HUD elements are removed until they're needed or updated, making you feel more immersed within the game world, similar to Reforger. At number 21, we have the Bullets Hit mod, which is a derivative of Blast Core that implements some more impressive visuals for weapon effects, bullet impacts, and explosions without the performance hit, theoretically. These effects make battles feel way more epic, and it's just another aspect that comes stock with Reforger, which is still yet to get even more environmental destruction in the coming updates. For the sneaky monkeys out there who like to blow things up, it's always a good idea to stay out of harm's way by keeping a low profile. However, when you need to pull out your launcher to ambush an unsuspecting vehicle in Arma 3, your cover often gets blown as your character decides to get up. But thankfully, Arma 3 has a prone with launchers mod that, again, Reforger makes obsolete, because in the new engine, you can use your launcher from the prone position and stay hidden in that conspicuous looking bush on the side of the road. And finally, for those who are definitely not using exploits in PvP, the third-person camera for Arma 3 gets some love too. Instead of being positioned directly above and behind your character, the Ghost Recon third-person camera mod gives you a more aesthetic angle. Again, this is similar to how Arma Reforger places the camera for third person, which admittedly looks quite nice. So with these 23 mods, you can experience the many similar improvements of Reforger in Arma 3 in terms of features and design, which now that I kind of think about it, makes me want to go play Arma 3. This is Ironbeard, and I'll see you on the battlefield.